In the quiet town of Meadow Creek, nestled between rolling green hills and a sparkling river, lived an old baker named Arthur. His bakery, the Daily Bread, was famous not just for its warm, crusty loaves and sweet, flaky pastries, but for Arthur's generous heart. Every morning, just before dawn, Arthur would bake an extra loaf of bread. He didn't put it on the shelf to sell. Instead, he placed it on the windowsill outside his shop. This loaf was for any hungry soul who might pass by. For many years, a hunched-over man with tired eyes and worn-out clothes would come every day to take the loaf. He never said a word. He would simply take the bread, nod his head once, and walk away. Arthur, watching from inside, would smile. He didn't need thanks. The act of giving was enough for him. However, as time went on, Arthur started to feel a small seed of disappointment grow. The man never showed any gratitude. He would just grab the bread and leave. He could at least say thank you, Arthur grumbled to his wife, Eleanor, one evening, or just smile. Is that too much to ask? Eleanor, a woman with wisdom in her gentle eyes, stirred her tea. Arthur, my love, she said softly, you are doing a good deed. Why are you expecting something in return? The moment you expect thanks, the joy of giving disappears. Just keep doing good. What you give away will come back to you in ways you don't expect. Arthur listened to his wife, but his heart was still heavy. He felt unappreciated. The next day, he almost decided not to put the loaf on the windowsill, but then he thought of the man's hungry face and sighed. He baked the extra loaf and placed it in its usual spot, though with a little less joy than before. And so it continued. Every day, the man came. Every day, he took the bread. Every day, he simply nodded and left. Arthur's frustration grew. He started to think negative thoughts about the man. He's probably ungrateful. He thinks he's entitled to my bread, he muttered to himself while kneading dough. His thoughts became so bitter that one day, a dark idea entered his mind. What if I taught him a lesson? He thought, what if I put something bad in the bread? He imagined adding a bitter powder to the dough, something that wouldn't harm the man seriously but would make him sick enough to appreciate the good bread he had been receiving for free. The thought was tempting. He even took a small, dark bottle from a high shelf in his pantry. But as he looked at the bottle in his hand, his wife's words echoed in his mind. Keep doing good. He saw his own reflection in the dark glass, and he didn't like the person he saw. With a deep breath, he put the bottle back and shook his head, ashamed of his own thoughts. He baked a normal, delicious loaf of bread and placed it on the windowsill, just as he always did. Later that day, the man came, took the bread, nodded, and left. But this time, Arthur felt a sense of peace. He had overcome his own bitterness. He had chosen kindness over anger. A few weeks passed. Life in Meadow Creek went on. One evening, there was a frantic knock on the bakery door, long after closing time. Arthur opened it to find a young woman, her face pale with worry. Mr. Arthur, please, it's my father, she cried. He's very ill. He was on his way home from the city when he collapsed. A kind stranger found him on the road and brought him to our cottage. He's weak, but he told me to come here. He said you could help. Arthur's heart sank. Of course, he said, grabbing his coat. Where is he? The young woman led him through the winding village paths to a small, humble cottage at the edge of the woods. Inside, lying on a simple bed, was an old man breathing shallowly. As Arthur got closer, he gasped. It was the hunched-over man who took the bread from his windowsill every day. But now, lying there, he didn't look hunched at all. He looked tired, but his face was kind. The young woman, who was his daughter, began to explain. My father's name is Thomas, she said, her voice filled with tears. He used to be a successful merchant in the city. But a few years ago, his business failed. We lost everything. He was too proud to beg, but he was desperate to provide for me and my mother. He found a small job here in Meadow Creek, but barely paid enough for our rent. He was always hungry, always worried. Every morning he would stop by your bakery. She paused, taking a shaky breath. That loaf of bread you left out. It was often the only food he ate all day. It gave him the strength to work. He saved every penny he earned to send to my mother and me. He always told me about the kind baker who left out a loaf of bread, a true angel. He called it the bread of kindness. Arthur stood there, speechless. The man he had thought was ungrateful was actually a hero, sacrificing his own well-being for his family. The daily nod wasn't a sign of ingratitude. It was a silent prayer of thanks from a man too broken to speak but too grateful to forget. The daughter continued, "He wanted to thank you properly one day, when he had saved enough to stand on his own feet again. He always said, 'Every day I eat the bread of kindness, and every night I pray for the baker who makes it. May all the good he gives return to him 100 times over.'" Arthur felt a wave of shame wash over him as he remembered his dark thoughts, the bottle of poison he had almost used. What if he had given in to his anger that day? He would have harmed this good, noble man who was doing everything he could for his family. Tears welled up in Arthur's eyes. He looked at Thomas, who was now sleeping peacefully, and then at his daughter. I didn't know," he whispered. From that day on, Arthur not only continued to place a loaf of bread on the windowsill, but he also made sure Thomas and his family never went hungry again. He helped Thomas find better work, and soon the family was reunited and living comfortably in Meadow Creek. Arthur never forgot the lesson he learned. He finally understood his wife's words. The good you do comes back to you, often in the most unexpected ways. And sometimes the greatest reward for an act of kindness isn't a thank you, but the quiet knowledge that you've made a difference in someone's life, even if you never see how. The kindness you give is never lost. It travels, it grows, and it returns to you when you least expect it, reminding you of the simple, powerful magic of a good heart. Thank you for listening to our story today. We hope it brought a little warmth to your heart. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more cozy English stories. See you next time!